We know what Black Friday is, we know what Cyber Monday is, and we know that Giving Tuesday has emerged as a response that focuses on the importance of giving back. And it acknowledges that the residents and businesses of every community can get involved in the good of their community. My name is Shakiba Shayani, and I'm the President and CEO of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce. The perspective that I'm bringing today comes from recognizing the role that unusual suspects need to play in solving complex social issues. And I'm happy to have a colleague of mine here to have this discussion with me.
Thanks, Shakiba. I'm happy to be here. My name is Kris Cummings, and I'm the Chief Partnerships Officer at Openly. We're a social impact consulting firm that works here in Guelph, Wellington, the GTA, and across Canada. And the perspective that I'm bringing here today is as somebody who's lucky enough to witness and support individuals, groups of community members, and businesses and organizations contribute to their communities in all kinds of ways that make a really meaningful difference.
So as we know, Guelph fortunately has many businesses, both large and small, that are excellent corporate citizens. Many of you are in the room. They're excellent because they know that community matters, and it matters to everyone, that everyone's prosperity is positive, that we have good quality of life for everyone in our community. While Guelph truly is a good place to live and work, we still also face some serious issues. Affordability, as it relates to living, business, and housing, is a serious issue in our city and our region. Likewise, food security, addictions, mental health, the environment, and certainly the equitable access to opportunities to participate in arts, culture, and recreation. We know that we can respond to these challenges and create opportunities to make our community an even better place to be. So, on a day where we're here to celebrate giving back, we thought we'd have a chat about how to do that. So Kris, you have 20 years of experience seeing businesses, public sector, nonprofits, asking citizens, employees, and organizations to get involved in their communities. I know you've worked in municipal government for United Way and Openly. What have you seen that works?
Thanks, Shakiba. Yeah, that's right. I've been lucky enough to have seen community involvement almost as a way of life, growing up in a small village in rural Saskatchewan where there really weren't staff and formal organizations, and everybody literally just kind of had to pitch in as a way of life to get everything done. But I've also seen that through the roles that you've mentioned, and it really is a way of life in every community, large and small. We just often can't see it in really big communities. From what I've seen, community involvement can be large and small. It can be about people and organizations of all kinds supporting their community through awareness building, starting with kindness, volunteerism, and philanthropy. Anyone can do it, and we can do good by giving time, donating money and goods, and helping educate others about the issues in our community.
So is that the extent of it? Do you donate time and money and that's sufficient?
I don't know if we'd say, or I don't know if anybody in the room would agree that that's necessarily the extent of it. I think it's definitely where we start. It's the beginning. I think we know that it's not about giving on a day just like Giving Tuesday. It's actually that bottom lines and giving back are important year round. And it's also about involvement that achieves tangible, concrete results. Yet we know that still one of the biggest barriers to involvement is that not everyone is asked. And beyond that, people and businesses don't always know where to start, or when they do, there's the risk that individual people or businesses can sometimes feel like their own efforts might be getting lost or a drop in the bucket of massive community issues. People might fairly wonder whether their contributions matter on big issues that affect a lot of people.
You're right about that. I know that we aren't short of many good causes and organizations to support, but I do also know that it can feel overwhelming to navigate something and see results if we're contributing to a huge issue. How do we reduce those barriers?
Well, throughout this conversation, based on what I've seen, I'm going to suggest that at least part of the answer is about being really purposeful or planful in three kind of key ways. First, involving people in ways that matter to them, things that they're individually passionate about, either as a person or as an organization. Second, involving people in ways that immediately and noticeably make a concrete difference in some way so that everybody can see the results of their efforts. And last, involving people in ways that combine with other people's contributions for an even bigger impact together.
The first two, involving people in ways that matter to them and noticeably making a concrete difference, make a lot of sense in terms of honoring an individual person or organization's contribution. But what about the third point about the combination of many contributions for a bigger impact? How would you explain what it means or how it looks to come together to address an issue collectively?
So I think that we all know that this often includes collaboration or partnerships between public, private, and nonprofit partners whose common interests can create solutions and responses to social, recreational, cultural, and environmental opportunities and challenges. For a really concrete example though, think about something like minor sports. They couldn't possibly happen in any community without contributions from many different individuals and businesses. There are boards of volunteers, sometimes a few paid staff, loads of other volunteers of all kinds, and contributions of goods, services, and money from public, private, and nonprofit sources. There's a lot going on there. A lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of awareness in order to provide hockey, soccer, or baseball in any community. And that notion of multiple contributions adding up to make minor sports happen, for example, is just as real in arts, culture, environment, and social issues.
So it's the sort of idea that many hands make light work. A lot of people and businesses can contribute. And it also sounds like it can take some coordination to do it well. So how do we, whether we're sitting here as a community of residents, employees, or representatives of businesses and other organizations, how do we do this collectively in a big, meaningful, coordinated way?
So let's take meaningful first. Meaningful is key. It goes to those first 2 points about involving people in ways that really matter to them and in ways that measurably lead to a really quick difference. Making sure that involvement is meaningful is important to respect people's contributions and to make sure that those contributions have as much of an impact as possible. And we get into some wrinkles or debates about something like one-time contributions here. Every year at about this time, there's a story that circulates, and it's about the surge in interest in single-day volunteerism that occurs at this time each year. Individuals feel like they want to get involved, which is awesome. Businesses have teams of people who want to make a difference, particularly around the holiday season or the new year when we might be feeling a bit more reflective. And nonprofits know that they're going to get a flood of requests to volunteer for a day and receive a bump in small, one-time cash donations. The story that I'm referring to comes from a shelter in another city that took a really deep breath and decided that the flood of requests that they were getting wasn't making as much of a difference on the issues of shelter and homelessness as it possibly could. It also puts a huge strain on nonprofits to figure out how to safely put a surge of volunteers to good use in a safe and meaningful way for just a day or two. And even from a financial point of view, it can also be hard to plan for how to wisely spend an unpredictable bump in one-time donations. So the shelter in this story decided to stop accepting single-day volunteers and instead started to ask people to volunteer differently. As a result, they saw an increase in people volunteering year-round. I think that speaks to motivations and goes to meaningfulness in a couple of different ways. First, on the part of the volunteers, it says that they're interested in giving in whatever way makes the biggest difference possible. On the part of the nonprofit, it showed a willingness to be a really responsible steward of the gifts that people were giving to them.
So does that mean that single-day donations and volunteerism aren't good, and that as contributors we should be comfortable being asked to give differently from the organizations we care about?
No, I want to be really clear. I don't think that single-day volunteerism or one-time smaller donations are bad. I think the motivations are good, and I think that the contributions are really helpful. People could be looking for a way to start their involvement, and they're just motivated to find a way to do good. I've seen single-day volunteers and one-time donors go on to become long-term volunteers, donors, and advocates if we do a really good job of engaging them. But also, one-time contributions of time and money can add up to a really big impact.
So what's the bottom line?
Well, I think here's where we kind of shift to that third point of making sure that contributions from many different sources add together and multiply together. So how do we do awareness raising from the simple act of a share on social media through to organizing whole advocacy campaigns? And how do we do donations from the one-time $20 contribution to the long-term monthly or large corporate contributions? And how do we do volunteerism from the single day to the ongoing in a way that is as planful and purposeful as possible? It could have something to do with making sure that all of those contributions are purposefully adding up to make an impact.
So you're talking about kind of doing social good in a way that recognizes that a rising tide floats all boats?
I guess so. It's planning for the idea that everyone is contributing for the greater good. We can understand quite quickly the value of social good to a nonprofit. It means it's making progress on its mission. To a public or government entity, it means it's achieving value for its residents and stakeholders. To businesses, it means that they're building profit and prosperity in a community that acts as a solid foundation to their productivity. And maybe most importantly, at the individual level, it's about doing something that feels important and maybe helps us feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves, part of a whole community that's in it together. That is the part that's the multiplier bit, that contributions from one can add up alongside involvement from others. If that's happening, involvement can be small and large and one time and ongoing, whatever's meaningful to the contributor.
Today is about celebrating community involvement and community giving. And we're suggesting that we need to honor and maximize everyone's contributions by 1, involving people in ways that matter to them, 2, making a noticeable and concrete difference in some way, and that thirdly, we want to combine the contributions of others for greater impact together. How do we do this? How do we actually pull all of that together?
I think we all know it takes planning. We know as a nonprofit, as a public entity, as a business, I think all of us are asking, how do we engage our stakeholders, our residents, our customers, our neighbors, our employees in the most meaningful ways possible? There is a model actually that came out of the Harvard Business School. It balances 3 points: that at any given time, we only have a certain amount of capacity to get anything done, that we have to do things that matter to the public, and because what matters can change quickly, we need to get people involved as participants, as volunteers, as donors in defining and creating what it is that they value, and that when we create that value, whatever those things are that matter to them, whether it's a response to food insecurity, a response to housing issues, beautifying parks, whatever that is, that it builds confidence and it attracts more support. It closes the loop for people. And that in turn creates more capacity for doing good. So it's a lot of contributions alongside each other towards issues that matter, creating results that build confidence and that lead to more contributions. We said earlier that a barrier to participation is the feeling that we can have individually that sometimes our contribution might be a drop in the bucket of a huge community issue. But if those drops are clearly being caught up in a bigger, clear plan that everyone can see, then they can quickly add up and everybody can understand how they're a part of something bigger. In private sector jargon, that might be like undertaking joint ventures or partnerships to community issues. In nonprofit jargon, it's like taking a collective impact approach to community involvement. Or in the public sector, it might be like taking a joined up or a citizen engaged approach. It just means making working together the norm.
So to me, it sounds like we have a real life example of that in Guelph, in the community plan that the city of Guelph undertook. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar, but they involved stakeholders from different sectors and all walks of life to identify what the community needs and what the community wants to look like in the next 10 plus years. Now, residents, businesses, nonprofits, and other stakeholders can identify their role in that plan and see how they can get involved to move the needle on any given community issue. Not to worry, the City of Guelph does plan on helping stakeholders through that process.
Yeah, I think that's a really comprehensive example of this idea. It can be, but it also doesn't have to be, as large as a whole community plan. Think again about the example of a hockey league. But in any case, it's about getting people involved to identify what's valuable to them and being coordinated and clear about how everyone's contributions, large or small, add up to make a difference.
And that matters, because if we want to be really authentic about celebrating the contributions people make on Giving Tuesday and throughout the year, we really need to make sure that we ask people to get involved or make contributions that are going to add up together and make a difference. Otherwise, people will feel like their contributions aren't making the difference they want, and they'll question whether or not they should do it each year.
Totally. It's on all of us to make sure that our contributions are intentional and our solicitation of contributions are serving a purpose to really mean something to those who are contributing and to have a real impact on the community.
Okay, to wrap up, what's one piece of advice you would give to business?
To find which issues matter to them, their employees, and how they want to make a difference in the community they're in. Whether it's really formal or whether it's informal, define a CSR mandate and a plan to invest in it year-round. For a small business, that can be what matters to the family or the team, and then how they're going to contribute to that throughout the year.
And what about the advice that you would give to a nonprofit?
Nonprofits can build volunteer and donor programs that plan for contributions, large and small, one-time and ongoing, with mechanisms in place to be able to solicit, receive, and utilize support in different forms, going to different results.
And then what about the big picture, like a community-wide plan?
I think here businesses, government, and nonprofits can connect their work and their plans for the contributions of donors and volunteers alongside others on bigger issues in the community.
So finally, what's one piece of advice to the individual donor or volunteer or advocate?
Find the issue or the cause that matters to you because of your experiences, your joys, your family or your friends, and look for an opportunity that allows you to contribute in a way that's meaningful to you and where you can clearly see the difference that you're going to make. If you enjoy it, do it again and again, and most importantly, know that your community appreciates everything that you're doing and that you are in fact making a difference.
Great. Thank you, Kris. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.